It's absolutely foundational. So what you said there is the common theme that I think we see with most people nowadays. Most people are stuck in the sympathetic fight-flight response, which basically means if you make it like an analogy, they're spending money in their bank account of health faster than they're replenishing it. So there's only so much stress the body can take before it starts to manifest into a symptom response.
Hey, aloha, everyone. I'm Dr. Sandra Rose Michael, and I am the inventor of the true bioscalar EE system technology, and coming to you from our new studio here in Las Vegas. But we had a very, very special event going on recently. It was a study to research the effects of the EE system. And Roland Pankovich, you're one of the people that joined us here in Vegas, along with our illustrious Dr. Glenn Ryan, our Stanford Harvard biophysicist. And we did a 3-day study or 3 overnights in an EE system. And so we just thought we'd bring some of the preliminary conversation and chats about as the study's being written up, so to speak. I thought we'd just chat um, about healing and what this really means and why we're doing the research and what we're looking at and the importance of it. So, Roland, what would you, how do we introduce you?
That's a great question. I think about that myself. So I'll say that my background is quite varied. Like a lot of people in the health world, I've gone on a journey of understanding health physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and I love tech. And the reason I wanted to get involved with this in the first place is you and I got introduced about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And funny enough, you made a comment at an event that inspired me to actually want to do a study. So I did a preliminary, very quick 2 hour EE system study at a center in Tarpon Springs in Florida. And the positive research was actually quite impactful and powerful. And I've always wanted to do more of a study or a more formal study, I should say. And being a clinician, I really care about the outcome. Everyone wants to know how do things work, why do they work, in what manner. If someone gets better, I'm happy. If someone's struggling, then we need to find a way to get them healthy. So I wanted to figure out, can this system actually be that simple in the sense of does it simply allow you to stay in the room and induce a positive change? And that's really what myself and Glenn studied through two different means that we can get into.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was wonderful to have both of you combine on a study, and you're still trying to correlate some of the results because Dr. Glenn was doing, and he's our Stanford Harvard biophysicist. So he was doing DNA testing off a buccal swab, which is a cheek swab of actual DNA samples before and after. And you're doing the heart rate response variability predominantly with your research, which I love heart rate response variability because it's so important in being able to determine the shift or the reset, the reboot that needs to occur for people with a good response variability. But that, you know, I mean, there's been a lot of research with that, with heart math and different
Mhm.
people. And we've done a lot of heart rate response variability over the last 20 some years as well. So I wanted to incorporate that testing because it's particularly good for talking about one of the things I like to talk about, that reset, that reboot from going from fright, flight, or fight, which is called sympathetic, to parasympathetic, where the body's ability to respond appropriately to the stressors, this versus staying in that stressed out mode, staying in that stress reaction patterns where people get literally stuck, stuck or get oriented into those constant patterning of reaction, staying stressed out from the stressors versus being able to respond to the stressors appropriately. So that reboot into, from sympathetic to parasympathetic. Do you want to explain more of what that means? It's so critical, a difference.
It is. It's absolutely foundational. So what you said there is the common theme that I think we see with most people nowadays. Most people are stuck in the sympathetic fight flight response, which basically means if you make it like an analogy, they're spending money in their bank account of health faster than they're replenishing it. So there's only so much stress the body can take before it starts to manifest into a symptom response. And most people are taught to ignore symptoms. A symptom is the body's consciousness trying to get the person's attention to say, hey, something's not right here. Slow down, address it, and hopefully I can get back to a state of health, homeostasis. But what do? Something hurts, we take a painkiller. If something's bothering us, we ignore it, we push it off. And then as time goes on, that symptom eventually becomes some sort of ceremonial process called the disease diagnosis. And if you think about the word dis-ease, it's the body in a state of uneasiness. And to me, dis-ease leads to illness. And then someone's unfortunately stuck with a diagnosis, a symbolic thing that they're carrying through their lives. It's becoming not only a physical thing, but it's a mental thing and an emotional thing. So if someone's going to heal, they have to get their nervous system out of that fight flight response because you can't heal in the same environment that made you sick. What most people don't understand about healing is that the process of healing is a process. It's not taking a pill, it's not a quick fix overnight thing. You have to rewire how your unconditional reality is wired. What I mean by that is our unconscious mind is in the driver's seat. So someone can be in a state of they're normal, but their normal is actually highly stressed, but because they're used to it, they don't actually know any different. And why this is impactful to talk about is a lot of the participants that we saw in this study, this is kind of where they were. I have a way of looking at the relationship between sympathetic and parasympathetic, and for someone to be able to get back to a baseline of health, they need to regenerate their parasympathetic activity and make friends with their vagus nerve again. But most people, because of their thoughts, the pace of their lifestyle, the kind of foods they eat, the quantities of alcohol, the quantities of caffeine, and we'll call the unhealed traumas of the past, their life is sympathetically dominant. And the body has some bandwidth for tolerance of that. It can take 10 to 20 years for symptoms to show up. It can take 30, 40 years for a disease to happen. But unfortunately, we're not taught that the process of healing is kind of like reversing that action back through the dark night of the soul so the body can regenerate. And the key to getting that regeneration turned on is having energy. And I'd love to know your thoughts about this, Sandra, because in my world, the two things that determine health are energy and adaptability. If someone has enough energy and they have adaptability, they can deal with a little bit of stress here and there. And providing that they appropriately take recovery time, the body can bounce back. But if someone chronically shrinks their adaptability window because they're engaging in too much sympathetic dominance, then all of a sudden that big bucket of energy starts to shrink down. And that's what we're lacking nowadays as a society because we're trying to get energy back in a way that's not real energy. Caffeine isn't energy. Relying upon vaping and nicotine, those things aren't even supplements. They're band-aid solutions, but you say this all the time. The energy that created the body is the energy that heals the body. And I think that's really what we're after. Maybe you can expand upon that because that's something that I've used that I understand intrinsically, but I don't know that anyone else really understands that.
Yeah, well, that is a vital piece. The power that made the body, the energy that made the body heals the body. And that we've gotten so accustomed to being in such stressful environments, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Some of it just the bombardment of EMF, ELF, radiation, microwave, where there isn't anybody right now that's not dealing with extreme radiation poisoning. But when you're being bombarded 24/7, it's taking the body's energy to cope with what's considered a hostile environment. It's taking all the body's energy. So if it ever felt like it was taking all your energy just to cope, that's where that feeling came from, because the body is orienting to cope with a hostile energetic environment. So, and the body's the unconscious mind. And like you say about the symptoms are like your higher self, really. The body's the unconscious, subconscious, but it is your connect to the superconscious in a sense. And that's part of our teachings with Huna, for example. But it's like what allows healing, as soon as you get the message from higher self, what something's about, then there's no more need for the symptom. And so some of those symptoms are your body going, hey, yo, Do we have your attention yet? It pokes you, it prods you. And then do you listen when it's a still small voice? Do you wait till it's yelling and screaming at you? Do you wait for the 2x4, the steamroller, or the Mack truck? Eventually, you learn to listen sooner because as soon as you get the message from your higher self, no more need for the symptom. So it is about knowing whatever there is to know, the knowing of which then can allow us to heal and function perfectly. Knowing whatever there is to know, the knowing which that can allow us to be in our wholeness, in our holiness, and total remembrance of who we are, all that we are, all that we're here for. Because again, the body is a condensation of consciousness, and it shows you where you've moved out of alignment with your own selves, your own self, your own source.
And that's so interesting that you say that because as a clinician, I'm always looking at things practically. There's an old saying that I once heard was that in theory, theory and practice are the same thing, but each individual person and their healing journey really is a unique N of one journey. What I mean by that is it's individual. And when we conducted the study, we did a baseline and then we did a post follow-up test after the people had spent 3 days in the study. And of course, there are some variables there. There were a bunch of perfect strangers, or at least they were when they started. I'm sure they felt more like a slumber party family at the end.
Yeah,
But
we had
going,
27 people all
yeah,
sleeping in the same room together with snorers. And
exactly. And we did
so there's
study them.
variables.
There are things, and we know we did do our baselines in the evening, we did our follow-ups in the morning, and as you know, with circadian rhythm, the morning the cortisol levels are higher, so typically someone's their most vigilant in the morning. But from looking at the preliminary data, there's some patterns that I saw, and I'd love to get your opinion on some of these things. For example, the thing that I saw that most people increased was the ability to recruit their parasympathetic system more. But there was a bigger swing of stability because most of those people had no idea how to recruit parasympathetic anymore. It's almost like that old friend that you haven't spoken to in a while, like, oh, I don't know what's going on with you. Tell me about yourself. There was this massive swing when they went back to their conscious realities that the mind started to come in and influence more of a sympathetic drive. So, do you think that that is a way of practically explaining the body consciousness more coming online, the unconscious, but when they become more so aware of what's going on, the programs come back and they slow the evolution out back into that sympathetic way of being?
Yeah, it's kind of what I would call neurological ruts, where
Mm,
people
okay.
have gotten programmed or conditioned into certain patterns. And so, the technology can be quite a bit of a pattern interrupt for people, but it's giving energy, but it's still up to them where they go with it. Healing is a process. It also is about detoxification. So sometimes, as the toxins are being pushed out, people get more irritated because the toxins are aggravating. So they might feel a little more aggravated until they get in that salt bath. And that wasn't even part of, what they were doing, after that test, with the testing.
Yes.
Yeah, which we really want to do more testing again with those variables because the cortisol levels and all that are higher like in the morning, and we should be doing more of the testing over different times of the day maybe. But also that bath is so critical for the body unwinding some of the toxins, and pulling, whether it's heavy metals or metabolic waste, or just from the whole cascade of the stress hormones, the cortisol, and the whole cascade of the stress hormones. But getting into that salt bath afterwards, to me, would have been really, really important that we stress that, presented that opportunity more to, to the participants. But not everybody had, some people had come in, they didn't have a bathtub, things like that. But that salt bath is where, 2 cups of salt, 2 cups of baking soda, 1 cup of borax is one of our simple things. I know we gave everybody a bag of salt, of our EE hypercharged salt. But getting in that water after the body has all this energy, and then it's still up to your body and you what you do with the energy. So the first thing the body wants to do is clean house, though, and so the body's going to be trying to release all the toxins, from the cells, from the organs. And the largest organ of elimination is the skin. The skin's the third kidneys. It's so important. So when you get in that salt bath and breathe, which is also critical, that respiration, that breath, because that's what allows the whole body to relax. That deep breath where you can allow the body, the cells are literally excited with the energy. And the first thing they want to do is clean house. So they're going to be trying to push the toxins out of every nook and cranny. You get in the salt bath, and the whole body can relax, release, and let go. And the salt, it will act like a magnet, because it's a negative charge. The toxins are a positive charge. With the heat, you open up the pores, open up the capillaries, and that can pull a lot of that aggravating, irritating toxins right out into the water. It's like the world's easiest detox. Where the whole body goes, can finally let that all go and say aloha to it, let it go down the drain. It's good. But I mean, that whole response too, you probably saw it in the study where when people go into a 0 point energy, of a pristine energy, where all of a sudden there's no more EMF, ELF, no more bombardment. You've got a clean, energetic environment that's oxygenating and super healthy for the body. We see this all the time where the body goes, oh, I can finally relax. And you probably heard a lot in the feedback from the study. Most of the people will go into a deeper sleep than they've ever done, or they'll have lucid dreaming, and because of the way it works with the pineal gland, and that's pretty awesome too.
That's something I did see a lot actually, because my methodology of testing involves lying down and there's a period where you have to stand up and it tests the regulation difference about how the body has to calibrate going from horizontal to vertical. And I
That's
saw
that
that
term adaptability.
exactly. I saw the biggest difference in people before and after in terms of their lying down ability to stay relaxed, to stay chill, for lack of better description. And when they started standing up, it's almost like their neurology hadn't gotten used to the fact that they could get into such a deep state of relaxation. So it kind of whip coils or whiplashes back to what they're used to. And that's the big discrepancy that I saw, because when you start to change someone's regulation and heart rate variability response, neurons that wire together fire together, right? There's an old saying in neurology. So what's accustomed is what that person's operating system is going to maintain so they can feel normal in their bodies. And this pattern is actually reflective of detoxification as well. As the body starts to change, it loses its normal state of accustomed adaptability and starts to go into a place it's not been either before ever or in a while. So the person starts to feel a little bit of a shift coming out. And I saw that in the data where most people had a bump in overall energy levels, most people had a bump in adaptability. But I could see as I was testing people in a follow-up, they felt something that was different inside of themselves, but they couldn't necessarily verbalize it. And some people even had a little bit of an emotional response afterwards, which is I find interesting. Is that something that can happen in the technology where not only are you working on the physical body, but do things in the emotional body or the mental bodies also shift?
Oh, absolutely. Because again, the issues are in the tissues, so to speak. Behind the toxins, the physical toxins, whatever it might be, the environmental toxins from the food, the air, the water, behind that is the emotional toxicity. And so very, very common for people to have emotional release as well.
Mm.
And again, that's where that salt bath really helps people to make that transition from being able to be in the system to support the body in actually releasing more of that, whatever it is, emotional or physical toxicity. The water works so much with that, and the salt, the old purifier. And that's why that really, really helps people with that shift. And we really didn't have room for that in this study. So you're going to have to come back to Vegas, and we're going to have to do some more
I would love
different.
to. I would love to get deeper into that stuff because in my practice, I found that most people who suffer from chronic illness, it's not a physical problem. The physical nature is where it shows up. The body has to process everything, but it's the psycho-emotional and oftentimes spiritual dysregulation that cause people to get into this place. And I think it can also be the wonderful catalyst for a massive awakening for someone because good things don't come easy. Unfortunately, from the pits of despair offer the greatest opportunities for the phoenix to rise, so to speak, in someone's life. So I really think that with what's going on the planet, if we're working on all levels of the physical and non-physical bodies and we're saturating them with energy, life force, light, whatever it is that's coming through for that person, it's a massive opportunity to change the perspective of how we look at life in ourselves and look at life in the world around us. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but it was just very interesting to watch this as data and then correlate it with looking at real people and their responses and the change in their expressions, the change in how their body postures are, the change in how they feel emotionally when you're around them.
Yeah, and it's typical. I think you probably noticed this, how everybody's eyes are brighter afterwards, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's more of a glow to the skin, the eyes are brighter, but it's what I call cellular enlightenment.
I love that.
You know, because it's activating the light within us, but it's literally activating the light at the core of our DNA. And so as that light is radiating, you see that in their countenance very obviously, but it's giving people the energy. It's still up to them where they go with it, what they do with it. People have profound experiences. You heard all about it. I mean, some of it's simple. I know one of the gentlemen sharing with me how his A1C was 13 and went to 7.
Yeah, dramatic shift there. And that was an incredible, and he was monitoring his blood sugar the entire time. He was getting a little
Yeah.
stressed out because he never saw his blood sugar dip below 115. So he was like, "Oh my gosh, is this gonna end?"
Uh-huh. Yeah, so he was actually monitoring the blood sugar.
It
That,
was
yeah,
dropping in real
A1C is a
time.
marker for diabetes, and it took him from high diabetes marker to a low one, and that the A1C doesn't normally change that fast. So it's
No,
very,
usually it's a 3 month
very
thing.
interesting that, so you have those kinds of studies, but it's also making those inner shifts. And I like to talk about as soon as you're present with those parts of yourself, those parts of your body, with love, it all heals. And so love is them relaxing into a new state. And we're telling people they're literally breathing light, breathing energy, but breathing light through every cell. Tell people to breathe love through every cell, every part of themselves, and breathe that love into the heart first and let that flow through every aspect of being. And so, that relaxing into a new place of peace and power and light and love. But deep relaxation states is what we typically hear a lot of, where the body is finally in an environment where it can fully relax. Although being in a room with 27 strangers for a scalar slumber party, some people, were a little more challenged by that than others. But even so, there was some profound, besides the documented clinical type research that was done by both you and by Dr. Glenn Ryan. I think there were a lot of wonderful testimonials.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone had a positive experience of their time there. And, I was very grateful for people to donate 3 days of their time for us. And it was a wonderful experience because they got to go into a 48 unit system. It was beautiful, new and clean. But it was interesting to see how each of them differed in how their energy had changed before and after. And wanted to get into something with you. And it's in that concept of energy. And I want to communicate something that's a perspective of mine. I'd love to know what you think about this, right? So people misrepresent energy in terms of what they think it is. I think people think energy is coffee or Red Bull. They think energy is stimulus, right? And more energy doesn't necessarily mean that afterwards you're going to be bouncing off the walls. You want to run a 10K. Like you can go ahead and do that if you want. But how the body uses energy is to deal with all the compromises, the backlogs, and the compensations that
Yes.
are moving you away from optimal physiology and physiologic response. So, for example, If someone goes into the EE system and afterwards they might expect to be super energetic, but if they get more tired, I believe people are misreading and misrepresenting what's happening. Your body is consciously choosing to get into a state of recovery. And if you want to override that, you're actually misusing the energy that your body would otherwise use to clear out old waste material from cells and tissues, pump it through the lymphatic system, the liver, the kidneys, and the skin, and get it out of the body. So maybe you can speak a little bit to how energy might be experienced by people in different ways after doing a various number of hours in the system.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point because we tell people, to go in and close their eyes. How the technology works best is in the delta and theta brain states. Because that way, when you close your eyes, you can internalize the energy. And, the infinite innate intelligence of the body knows how to function perfectly, knows how to do everything, knows how to heal itself. Absolutely, the infinite innate intelligence of your body knows what it's doing. But people have been taught to override and not listen to their body, and be unconscious about their physical or their internal processes. And so a lot of that is, I mean, as long as the eyes are open, more than 80% of the body's energy is being externalized. That's why it's so important to get people to close their eyes and go into the delta and theta, because that is the state where the body can do that recovery, repair, rejuvenation, regeneration, literally, because, we have been doing different epigenetic studies and on biological age and versus chronological age and the repair of the DNA itself. So the body takes time to heal. It takes time to heal. So when you've been in the system, the body's trying to use all that energy to do repair, rejuvenation, and regeneration. You're going to want to sleep some more because that's where the body heals. So you might not have, come out wanting to run a marathon. Now, somebody that's super healthy, their body did what it needed to do when you took a nap in there, and then they're raring to go. But
Hmm.
most people have such a toxic overload that the body's going to need to use that energy for its own priority first, which is cleanup, which is,
Mhm.
that rest and relaxation side of things. And before it has the energy to externalize, and it's people have been taught not to quite honor their own healing process. Other things I like to talk about healing being like peeling an onion. And, as the body has more energy, it's going to push out what it no longer needs. And if it pushed all the toxicity out at once, it would probably kill you on its way out. The body knows what it's doing. So it'll release as much as it can, as quickly and easily as it can, without creating uh, you know, more issues, so
Like
it's kind of
healing
like peeling
crisis.
an onion. Yeah, not putting it in crises, it's not, the body's not ever going to do anything that goes against its own wisdom. And people don't understand that. They've been so accustomed to shutting down a symptom of something. When the healing process is in that, there's something called retracing, or what could be called a Herxheimer effect, as the body is pushing out what created the dis-ease in the first place, whatever it was. There may be a re-experiencing of those same symptoms as the body is processing out or pushing out that particular set of toxicity. And it's always a combination of the biochemical toxicity, the toxicity to the tissues, but also the toxic emotional stuff that's been connected and with that. And so healing is a process. I talk about let that shift go. Love is letting go. Let's tell your whole body can relax, release, and let go, because that is so key. So it's also letting go of those mental constructs of what energy or healing should or shouldn't be, or how you should or shouldn't be. You got to quit shitting on yourselves and shitting on your body. you know, and let things go a little easier. And that's breathing and trusting and allowing the process, breathing light and letting go of everything in the way of greatest life, breathing love, letting go of everything in the way of your greatest expressions of love and life here on earth. So it's an inner process, but sometimes, it can be like peeling an onion where some of those layers stink more or are thicker than others or come
And there's
off
always
easier
some
than
tears along
others.
with it. You just don't know when that's going to happen either.
Yeah, it's like peeling an onion.
Yeah.
And behind the emotional stress and all this stuff is the joy, and that's what people forget as well. Going into the power of the presence and the love that's really behind it all. And when people hit those states, I mean, it's like a shamanic journey where you're going into the ecstatic states of the ecstasy of the love that's really behind all of this cosmic comedy of experience and creativity here on Earth, where we've been very creative in how we've chosen to be here and how we've chosen to experience, because nobody does your emotions to you. Nobody does them to you. And with what people were eating then, they were literally feeding their old emotional baggage, feeding their issues, eating out of old programs, stress programs and things like that. you know, so this is an inner process of unwinding all that and creating new response patterns where I like to say you have the energy to change your mind, to change your diet, to change your life, the energy for the body to heal. And, everything wants to function more optimally. So there's that law of dynamic homeostasis in the body, homeostasis, where everything wants to be in balance. And that's what the technology supports with that 0 point. It's cumulative, but it's a continual reorganization of all those neurons and all the neurological pathways and all the signaling, the cell signaling, and everything's accelerated. It's a total reorganization to higher levels of function. But it's still your choice how you use the energy, what you do with the energy.
So that comes to the concept of coherence that we were talking about the other day, right? So
Right.
I always look at health as coherence and I look at illness as entropy or chaos because there
Right.
is definitely a blueprint to the body. And one thing that came through to me listening to you say that is you gave a really nice description of almost like a fundamental owner's manual of living in a physical body on the planet Earth, right? Because we're not taught how these things work. Disease is not a mistake. A disease manifestation is a conscious decision by the body to show you where you are on all levels because the body only knows how to express health. But we've been taught that when someone gets into a state of disease, we need to look outside of us in order to figure out the solution. But what you're saying is the physical, the mental, the emotional, and spiritual abilities for us to heal are through us understanding how we work physically to some degree, investing in that with our will, obviously allowing for healing to take place. And what we're really trying to get people do is to go back to a place of coherence inside of their system. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah, coherence is a really good piece, and people have held on to their ideas of how things should be, could be, would be, held on to their ideas of how their body should be, could be, would be, and these are holding patterns in the body. So you can see the body as a circuitry, and these were the circuit jams. you know, or it's like old copper wiring that's breaking down and it's short circuiting here and there, versus we want to rewire everything to like platinum where the cell signaling is in total coherence with, which means no impedance in the energy flow and informational flow in the body, because everything is information in the body. Everything is, so we're speeding up that what's called that neural transfer velocity, where everything is communicating at a much a cleaner, faster rate because of coherence. Coherence is an extremely important principle. That space where there's no impedance. So, where the energy, you let go, encouraging the body to let go of those holding patterns. The body is a continual monitoring device. It'll show you exactly where your issues have been. Mentioned shoulders. Should is the bulk of the word shoulder. Those old
The
shitty
wordplay game. Yeah.
attitudes. When people carry their stress and the oversense of responsibility, like they got a better idea than God and they're going to make God work better somehow. Let's talk about control issues are in the shoulders. But that the spots in the shoulders also relate to the holding patterns in the colon. The
Mm,
ileocecal valve is that right shoulder.
yeah, the inability to let go, for example.
Exactly. So everything correlates and corresponds in the body. And so you encourage people to let shift go, let go of all those holding patterns. And the only way anything ever got stuck in the body, what created those neurological ruts or those holding patterns, is is from that stoppage of the breath. This is where the breath is so very important. That's why I talk about breath so much. Aloha, oneness with the breath and the love of all life, where you're breathing light and breathing in a little bit more so you can have a total letting go. Because if you're subventilating, there's never a total relaxation or a total letting go. And that's part of that staying stuck in fright, flight, or fight or sympathetic versus being able to relax, release, and let go, rest and relaxation response through the whole body, where the body can repair, rejuvenate, and regenerate it. But the way things got stuck was the holding pattern, the stoppage of the breath, the holding. That's what created the holding patterns in the body. Don't want to be here, don't want to deal with it, don't want to feel. God screwed up, something's wrong. The root of all negativity is in a simple thought, not good enough, not
Mm.
God, the denial of God, or the denial of the perfection, because whatever is perfect. And the more you focus on the perfection, the more the perfection can manifest more perfectly. That's your ultimate, that's your ultimate perfectionist affirmation. The more you focus on the perfection, the more the perfection can manifest more perfectly. He who is grateful in all things shall be made glorious. So thank your body for doing everything it's done to support you in this amazing experience on this planet.
And that's such a powerful thing to think about, especially when we're going into studying such things, because if we use the concept of coherence, the people who I see have the greatest coherence, their nervous systems are not only predictable, but they're operating at a really high frequency. It's funny that the vagus nerve is defined by high frequency. The sympathetic system is defined by low frequency, and this is the validation of how these frequencies exist within the body. I think that's kind of a funny cosmic joke of saying, hey, you want to be high frequency, you need to love the vagus nerve because that is the route for you to become in anabolic, which is growth, healing, and regeneration. So seeing people shift from a place of I guess, entropy or chaos to a place of coherence through the validation of looking at how the nervous system, which is the one system that oversees and overlooks everything in the body, is a powerful thing as a feedback mechanism to know that something positive is happening. But I want to ask you something that I've had a hard time, and I've asked you questions about this, so you've helped educate me. Looking at the EE system, we currently don't have a technology that can measure what it's doing because it's not a 3D linear time thing, is it? And I know the greatest challenge that you I guess, have is explaining these concepts when people say, well, how does it work? What is it doing? I want to know what to expect. Show me the science. And I'm getting from this conversation with you that we're actually teaching to heal, people to heal rather, in multiple dimensions, not only physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. It's harmonizing the sum of those things is really what I think the coherence and what happens in the system is. But what are some things that you have a hard time explaining to other people that might be a fun conversation to have so people can maybe drop some of their resistances or their curiosities that hold them back from trying this out.
Oh gosh, yeah. And one of my doctors, Dr. Victor Marcel Vega, said the less you tell people, the better. Just put
That
them
is
in
often true
rooms.
sometimes because if
Yeah,
the effect is there, it really doesn't matter, but people are curious. I was in the beginning. I'm
yeah.
not anymore because it's experiential, but
It's
you got to get
experiential.
there. You got to get
Yeah,
to
he
that
said, don't
place.
let them out of the room for at least 2 hours. He said the first hour to get through their mental masturbation. He had a different term for it, but
There's probably an F
uh,
word in that term, but we'll leave that one alone.
I'm sure, I mean, he is in the top 1% of doctors. It was a good medical term for it. Um, and the second hour to really have an experience. Uh, and, like, I joke about it. It's like, the cat that was brought in, skin and bones, couldn't walk. It was on dialysis, was on IVs, couldn't see, skin and bones. But this federal judge didn't want to put her cat down. The cat's name was Frankie. She'd had him since he was a kitten. Brings him in, puts him in the middle of the system. And the cat wasn't eating, wasn't drinking, wasn't walking. They were, on IVs. Cat was in bad shape, just skin and bones. Puts him in the middle of the system. After 2 hours, the cat got up and got a drink of water. And I didn't have to explain shift to the cat. Next time they brought the cat back, the cat jumped up on the bed. The cat lived, I don't know, a few more years, was going up and down the stairs. They didn't get him back in the system enough, but but he died I think he was 20 when he died finally or something. Anyway, but so or the child with, our peer-reviewed published study where a little girl 3.5 years old could not fake not having 8 to 10 grand mal seizures a day. And all we said was bring her in and let her, just bring her in, get her in. And she had her first seizure-free day after a third 1 hour session. So you can't fake that. You fake, and they had tried everything. I mean, hyperbaric and all the dietary stuff. They bought their own hyperbaric chamber. They had tried everything, every allopathic, and the mother calling me up and saying, my daughter smiled at me for the first time in a couple of years. It's been years since she smiled at me. She finally smiled at me again. I thank you for giving me my daughter back. Now, how do you put that in a linear, you know? And we didn't have to explain everything to the child. It's just a hyper healthy, energetic environment. But scalar by definition is nonlinear, non-Hertzian, fifth dimensional, and more, but fifth dimensional standing columnar waves, also known as torsion fields, but a standing columnar wave. You've got that infinitely projected Mobius, which is how everything actually works in the body. We're not linear. We're multi-dimensional beings. And yes, we can explain the mechanisms of action. Like I was talking with you, we could probably explain at least 50 different cellular mechanisms of action of what's occurring in the body, with between the different things as far as cellular voltage. Going, we're meant to be functioning at negative 70 to 90 voltage when healthy. Cancer can't exist in the body till it's below 20. Just like cancer cannot exist in the body in an oxygenated environment. This is Dr. Otto Warburg's work, remember? I mean, this is basic stuff. Cancer can exist in an oxygenated system where our technology is oxygenating, it's releasing the active oxygen. So many times we'll have people on oxygen and stuff, they'll wear their pulse oximeter in the room, and the oxygen levels go totally normal because the body is, being oxygenated fully. It's releasing the active oxygen and active hydrogen, and the active hydrogen being the ultimate antioxidant and what repairs the covalent hydrogen bonds. But also goes back to Warburg's work. They found that the body was trying to put every organ of the body back to its proper pH. That's your hydrogen potential, or the power of hydrogen, really, and that active hydrogen. And people are working with that. We are too, with active hydrogen, with our hydrogen bottles and things like that. A lot more awareness coming with that. That's one of the things our technology has been doing with the hydrobification effects of releasing the active oxygen and hydrogen. So, so cancer can't exist in an oxygenated system. It can't exist or meant to be an alkaline. And a lot of these toxins in the body are all acidic byproducts. And the acidification of the tissues is one of the hugest issues. That's another reason for that salt bath to pull that acidity out of the body. So there's so many mechanisms of action that we can talk about. The scalar is observable by effect.
The thing that came to me, and I don't know what you think about this as a way of looking at it, you know, the medical industry tries to learn about health by studying disease. And it's really a backwards way of looking at it because all you get really good at is understanding the mechanisms of action of disease. But when you're under a microscope, you don't have the perspective to zoom out with a satellite and look at everything that's going on because you're hyper focused on one little thing. I think the thing that would be wonderful for people to take on as a perspective is what you think healing is has to shift as a perspective because you will not understand healing through the sum total of all the biochemical processes at play, because that's just what's happening while the blueprint is being restored back to its optimal state. I
Mhm.
think it's really about understanding that this process is intrinsic upon someone's will. They're inviting into the opportunity and the belief that they can heal, and then trusting the body because, as we said before, the body makes no decisions by mistake, and it only knows how to get back to what's called a dynamic homeostasis, meaning a moment to moment change every millisecond of the day. It's trying to be the best version of itself. So we're not going to solve this how does it work problem by going into a 3D linear model of saying, well, it's oxygenation, it's detoxification, it's pH change, it's electron donors. That's all happening at the same time. But
Yeah.
we don't have to think about that, nor do our minds need to know that. We just have to trust in the process of healing because those are the people that have the biggest shifts that happen. When they surrender the process and they just allow themselves to say, okay, I'm falling into it. I trust the process. I'm going to believe in my body's capability to heal. That's when those things happen. When you try to force and control and use the mind all the time, you create polarity of anti-healing when you think about
Yeah.
how the process of healing is going to happen.
Oh, that's a really good point. You create polarity of anti-healing. Whatever you focus on expands. In other words, you can't, focusing on the symptom is not going to help because healing means wholeness and holiness. And I designed this to reactivate that remembrance in the body of the 12 strands of DNA. You know, the it's not junk.
Yeah,
God
all
didn't
the
make
junk
junk.
DNA in the body, right? We only have 23,500 genes or something like that.
Or to have whole brain thinking, because so much of this is about that right left brain synchronization, whole brain thinking. They say we use 3% of our brain. Well, why not have activate everybody's genius by rehooking up, rewiring? So that's part of what this is doing is reminding the body of its original divine design, or the DNA. That's our God code. And we want to put the DNA back into its original divine design, where it repairs itself, regenerates, regeneration. That's our genetic code, literally regeneration. And that's what the technology is designed to support. And it's a holistic effect. It's not like we're treating this, that, or the other thing at all. It's simply providing a healthy, energetic environment for people to heal themselves from the inside out, because all healing is from the inside out. So that's why this activates the light from within us. And it's still up to you to cooperate, cooperate with that higher divine design and the source, and connect with your source of all power and light and love or not. So it's still a choice. You can't make people heal,
Mhm.
but you also have to get them unfocused on the symptoms, because whatever you focus on expands. Like fighting cancer doesn't work. You want to focus on just, being super healthy. And you can't get super healthy if you're still paying to poison yourself. I mean, I always like to talk about that. You got to quit eating the carcinogens or eating what feeds the cancers. Sugar is so hyper addictive, or those energy drinks that's killing people. You've seen the studies because of how much it affects the heart.
Even consuming
Yeah, I
things
have a
like
question for you. Would you
yeah.
consider the vagus nerve? Is that what you're really mostly seeing the response of with the HRV testing?
Yes, I'm seeing a couple things. A, the response of the vagus nerve and its ability to show activity in recruitment. And I'm looking at the relationship between sympathetic and parasympathetic because there's this narrative in health that sympathetic is bad, parasympathetic is good. But if you were just purely parasympathetic, you would just be the couch. There would be no stimuli, You said breath in, breath out. Every inhalation is sympathetic, every exhalation is parasympathetic. In a perfect world, they have a one-to-one ratio, but you mentioned before, the issues happen that moment that breath stops. So you interrupted the pattern. And over time, when people continue to attract things that are of similar vibration to those stressful moments, they keep reinforcing that the sympathetic needs to be over recruited and the parasympathetic needs to be down regulated. Oh, we have a pause. There we go. We're back.
There was a pause.
There was a pause. What part did you hear? I can say that again because I remember what I just said.
You're talking about this. Yeah, it was really, really a good, important point you were making about the sympathetic and the balance between, again, it's a
Yep.
dance of life and the balance. It's all about dynamic homeostasis. So you're talking about, people thinking that it's the sympathetics bad and parasympathetics good, but you
You
know,
want it's left brain, right brain, right? Yin yang, left side, right side. You want that ability to go back and forth because, if you walk into a dark room and your pupils dilate, that's a good thing. But if you're looking at the sun and your pupils are dilated, that's not such a good thing for you because that's the body's innate intelligence of knowing what to do. What I think happens with a lot of people and why I focus on the nervous system is the regulation patterns in the nervous system show me how that person is choosing to compensate and where they're choosing to compensate physically. And you can predict a certain set of variables that come with it. Highly sympathetically driven people typically have digestive issues. They have a higher resting heart rate. They have poor tolerance to stress. They may have a lower threshold to where they start sweating and have become dizzy. And then highly parasympathetic people typically have the ability to build muscle more easily. They sleep well. They can fall asleep at the drop of a hat for having a nap, for example. And you also see it in their personalities. You see it in the way they express emotion. So this whole thing about the two dynamics having to be balanced is really what I'm trying to help people get back to. And a lot of the work that you've done has helped me look at this beyond just the physical body, because it's not just a physical thing. It is the perspective shift that I've had to make is the body is the place where all the stuff that's not working so well shows up, but we have to understand within our own internal journey and give ourselves license to heal by going into all of those things to push them out in the way that the body's trying to detox and push all the crap out so it can get back to a point of bringing nutrition in, bringing oxygen in, structuring water, having communication signals transmit effortlessly and efficiently through the body. You want the electrochemical aspects of the body to work in unison. That is that homeostasis that we talk about. And the vast majority of people are unfortunately stuck in left brain, linear, logical, no time for emotion. That imbalance that I see in people's presentations of how they look at the world as a projection of consciousness is connected to the diseases that they end up developing later in life.
yeah, and it goes both ways. I mean, too much of left brain or right brain.
Yeah.
Brain dominance has to do with the domination issues. And it means there's essentially a constant compensation for imbalance, which is struggle. And as long as the body has stayed in that struggle dominate dominant domination issues,
Hmm.
constant compensation for imbalance with right brain, left brain, masculine, feminine, yin yang, whatever sympathetic versus parasympathetic. It's not that any of them are better than the other. We just want to be in love. And bottom line, that's what creates healing, is that union, that
Hmm.
that balance, right left brain synchronization, but that union, a point of balance. That's that importance of a 0 point field or a 0 point energy to come back into that point of balance where you can access the infinite and unlimited power of the multiverse or source, or all God's love, essentially, because the whatever the need, whatever the problem, love is the answer. And it's all about radical self-love and loving those parts of yourself, loving those cells, loving those parts of yourself that held on to old ideas that were basically lies, that everything was kind of where you dam the flow of God to you, through you, or as you, is how I look at it. It's where you held on to ideas that were lies. And then it's the truth of God's love that really sets us free. But it's really about radical self-love. What if you could love your body as much as God loves you?
And that's where healing takes place. I think it's when people allow themselves to drop into that space in the system, that's when the body can take in all that's coming at it and it can start the shifts. And whether the shifts start as a physical, as you said, a presentation of an old pattern that's cellular memory that has to get wiped out, whether it's an old, I love the idea that in the word belief, the word lie is right in the middle. So if it's an old lie that needs to get rewritten in your reality, that needs to get pushed out. If it's old transgenerational stuff that's being stuck in your body that you're working on, that might be the precipitating factor to give you this epigenetic conditioning that manifests illness. If you get away from the linear thinking in the same way that even, some alternative health practitioners, or we won't use pharmaceuticals, it's all about supplements and going natural, that's still not holistic in the process. The only way
But
to truly heal.
treating symptoms rather than what's
Exactly.
the bigger picture,
Getting
really.
to the root cause. And that's why it's been so much fun to do this study, just to see what patterns do people present before and afterwards, what's changed, and can we correlate some of these changes as population-wide patterns that we can agree upon? Do we see individual aspects shift? I mean, we're at the beginning of this study process, and we haven't even spoken with Dr. Glenn yet, who looked at the charge inside the cells before and afterwards. So this is kind of a new frontier, and it's really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah. You talked about coherence. What he is looking at is the actual cell, ability to transmit voltage through the body, the cellular charge. He is what he is measuring is that impedance or charge going through the body. Like with the medallions, he did lab testing with human DNA, found a 28% increase in the electrical conductivity. So conductivity, and that's what he's looking at with the DNA samples, is the conductivity. That's that coherence, no impedance, but the ability to conduct energy, or the cell signaling, all the all the nerves firing, you know, with the brain, it opens up all these neurological pathways, and it sparks fly literally as the body makes these reconnects of, like going from old copper wiring to new platinum wiring in the body. And so it's kind of measuring that in a sense. I don't,
Mhm.
you know, because it'd be fun to have these arguments with
Oh, I can imagine
Glenn.
you and Glenn have a great back and forth with that, but I'm gonna definitely interview him because Glenn is such a brilliant guy, and his
Mhm.
normal parlance of where he is with his thought process is, if someone's not trained in a scientific background, it's hard to follow. So I really want to do my due diligence to help him. At least I can try to translate and disseminate the ethos of what it is he's seeing and he's explaining, because what you just said is a really good thing that I think people can adopt into their worldview. You don't have to only just take something for it to have an effect on your body. If a medallion is working, it shows you that energy as a field of information, when interacting with your own energy field, because we have an auric field, we have different aspects of ourselves, the harmonization of that energy first, the physical follows. So I think a lot of this education that we're talking about back and forth, although they're not new ideas by any stretch, and I don't claim to have mastered any of them, but I'm definitely on the journey to wanting to understand in a bunch of different variables. People need to hear this because then they can start opening their perspectives up to lessening the density of what's possible and what's not possible in their worlds. If you open up the idea that something being around you can have an effect on you, then you'll understand why someone says, don't put your cell phone to your head, don't sleep with your phone under your bed, because that's a negative imposition of a field on the cellular health of your tissues. But the opposite is true with the medallions, and of course, being in the system. It's just obviously a new, don't even want to hazard a multiplication of power because it's not really an accurate description. But you know what I'm getting at? It's a dramatically different way of hypercharging
It,
yourself.
And all life is energy, is what people need to,
Yeah.
kind of understand. All life is energy. Our technology, the medallions, are about reminding the body of its original design, how it's designed to function energetically. The original blueprint, so to speak, is that torsion field. There's that movie Thrive. It talks about the secret of the universe, the biggest secret being that torsion field, that scalar vortex, and so this reminds the body of its own natural functioning and abilities. And then it creates tremendous shifts. I had a wonderful call. Speaking of epigenetics, I'm going to discuss this one
Please.
with Dr. Glenn Ryan. And maybe we all need to go see what all the testing they're doing in Liechtenstein, because I
That
was
would be
on with
fun.
I was on with Liechtenstein, where they have a 108 unit system, right? 108, the sacred number from the Vedic traditions. And yeah, amazing. And the gentleman there that has it, he just kept thanking me profusely because they're seeing so much. But one of the examples he gave, he kept saying, the results they're seeing are unbelievable, just unbelievable. That was his term. But he had a woman come who's tested, they did biological testing. And I think this might have been similar to what you worked with Dr. Marangel.
Mm.
They did, what's her biological age before going in, biological age versus chronological age. So biologically, she showed as being tested as being 67 years old. And after 2 overnights, she tested as 34. So went from 67 years old to 34 as far as her biological tested age. And he goes, well, it wasn't as much shift on the second night. She only she only reversed 10 years on the second night. The first night she went from 67 to 44. The second night she went from 44 to 34. I thought that was pretty good to go reverse 10 years of age in one night.
I would say it's not bad. I mean, maybe she messed up on the time machine imprinting the date that she wanted to go back to, but that's incredible. Because that's what
Yeah,
people.
and this relates to some of the telomere testing stuff that we did also with Dr. Jenny Shu, and she's got two more studies in process. But people can watch an interview with SG Anon that was put out. Dr. Jenny Shu presented her research for the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, and it's an epigenetic study, but she also talks about her own telomere research from before and afters where it was profound, dramatic. I mean, she reversed from, like, if I recall correctly, from like 54 to 34 or something like that or so. And that was with the telomere testing, so a little different biomarker uh, than the other biological age stuff. But he said also in Liechtenstein that but also her breast cancer was gone. They couldn't find it anymore after 2 nights.
Wow.
So, but also we talk about peak performance. It's not everybody needs to do that kind of deep healing, but you can see how fast some people, the body will grab the energy and do anything and everything it can while it can, it literally was going to use the energy. So you want to give the body permission and thank your body for going for it. Thank your body for doing whatever it takes, whatever it takes. Thank your body for doing whatever it takes to totally heal and function more and more optimally. So he talked about how, their big thing there's soccer, that's their football.
Yeah, the
Their
real
big thing.
football, not the confusing name we have over here.
Right, exactly. That's their big thing. So they have their soccer team using it, and the president of the soccer club and the women's soccer team, they're all 4-0. So peak performance, injury recovery, all those kinds of good stuff. So that'll be fun. They're doing a lot of different testing there, and they had very, very sensitive equipment that showed that it was a true 0 point energy with imagine with 108 units and all kinds of technology and testing stuff. They did testing which showed it was totally nullifying any and all detrimental, disruptive, or destructive fields.
And given what we're exposed to nowadays, I mean, if we could see into the electromagnetic spectrum beyond the visible color, we would be terrified with what we saw in the skies of all the frequencies flying around. So, as we move to even more of an
Toxic soup.
electrified
I mean,
age.
it literally is a toxic soup. You can see a lot of it,
Yep.
that
And
and
you can feel it
strontium
too
and
if you're very sensitive. You can tap into it and it's
mhm.
dysregulating. And anything that takes away coherence from the body, even insidiously, slowly over time, that's where illness sets in. People don't understand that. And I would love to for people to take this away from that. Illness sets in an insidious way until the body can no longer ignore it. And then when you can no longer ignore it, you typically do something about it. So this is not only just for people who are ill, this is for being proactive. If you wish to take care of your health, no one's coming to save you. You have to be your own health practitioner. You need to be able to
Yeah,
monitor everything. You need to tap into your body consciousness as well as your own conscious and unconscious mind and fuse all of that together so you're working as a team for your own healing.
yeah. We're bringing the unconscious, the subconscious, superconscious into full conscious reality, into full conscious realization or manifestation. But we're living in such a toxic soup, and people have been just so bombarded, or the decalcification, and I mean, the decalcification of the pineal gland becomes so important because of all the fluoride and all the different things impacting our pineal gland. But that's one of the things with the technology, people get that lucid dreaming back because it's decalcifying the pineal gland. Huge, huge piece for people becoming more conscious
Got
and
to
that
connect with your astral self
realization.
every so often.
Mhm. And people ask, well, how much should you use it? How healthy do you want to be for how long? Because we are living literally in an absolute toxic soup of stuff. And so, all this is providing really is an optimized, healthy, energetic environment. But still, you've got to be proactive for your own health. Health is our greatest wealth. We only get one body this life. So this is your number one investment is in your own health. If you don't have your health, what do you have? What are you going to do? So people compromise, compromise, compromise until they're in trouble
Mhm.
and not paying attention. And then that's when you get that tap on the shoulder or whatever. Yo, hey, yo, do we have your attention yet? Hey, that's what pain is about. It's a communication. It's a communication. Do
The
we have
body
your
does
attention
nothing
yet?
by
And as
accident.
soon as you get the message, then there's no more need for that signal, that symptom.
I agree. Beautifully said. Dr. Sandra, we covered so much and more. I feel like we're just scratching the surface. We should probably do another one of these at some point. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, absolutely. I just got a message this morning from Germany. I thought, let me read that because it was very interesting. Um, they had an Indian city master in their center, a spiritual master, and he walked into the room, and after 1 minute, he said, it's a 0 point energy in here. And then he sat down for 3 minutes and basically described the system exactly how Dr. Michael describes it, just different words, but same essence. And he said, it's a holistic energy field, holistic, right? It, Yeah. Energy field. The energy penetrates the body, creates homeostasis, brings the entire body back into balance, and that's how the body heals itself. He was quite impressed with the energy and the system. He says it provides a constant of a higher consciousness that we can't attain ourselves easily.
Hmm.
Isn't that isn't that
In
an
other words,
interesting?
you fast track closer to spiritual enlightenment by simply being in there.
Yeah. EE stands for energy enhancement, but it also stands for accelerated evolution. Let's make that quantum leap of consciousness for the planet. Let's be
Mm.
that light. Yeah.
All right.
So what a time. You know, and this is time for us to live our greatest life. We wait a long time for this time on the planet. It's an amazing time to be here in this deep shift that the
Big
planet's
time.
going through, this turning of the ages. Wouldn't miss it for anything, as we're going more and more into that golden age of enlightenment, a great awakening, which cannot and will not be stopped. It's really rather exciting.
It is. And, for people who are experiencing, some tumultuous aspects of it, it's like just trust that it's all working out in your highest interest because that's how it has to go. For those who are willing to do the work, it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be amazing. Yes, a new heaven, a new earth. And you want to focus on the new earth. There's a destructuring for the restructuring, and focus on what we want, not what we don't want. Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, they can achieve. There's that old, that old, but if you think you can't, you can't. If you know you can, you can. What do we want to create? What do you want to create for your body, for your life, for your relationships, re-relationship, as we talked about,
Mhm.
re-relationship with your body, with your family, with your loved ones, with the whole world, with our earth, our beautiful Gaia, this beautiful planet. And thank you for all your work, Roland. I'm looking forward to that. And thank you, everybody, for letting us hopefully share just some understandings and chat a little bit
Yeah,
about
super
we
calm,
just want to
casual
heal the
conversation.
world.
That's
We
it.
just want, that's it. That's all. We're just here just trying to heal the world.
One person at a time if need be.
Whatever it takes.
Yep. Dr. Sandra, thank
And
you so much for your time, for sharing your wisdom with us. And I'm sure we'll have to do another one of these because I think we have a lot more to discuss. And hopefully everyone resonates with the wonderful information that you shared today. So thank you very much.
thank you. And aloha. Everybody, big thing to remember, no matter what happens, keep breathing. Breathing light, breathing love. God's only a breath away ever. And all things are possible for God.